To Mondo FunnyBooks 1 million, subtitled I Hate Comics. Let me just try and move the camera back a wee bit so it's not quite. There we go. Right, get the fan up a bit so I don't melt my computer. Right, hello. Yes, Mondo FunnyBooks. Episode 1 million, I Hate Comics. This is a special in-between episode like many that we've done previously, just to mark time and to keep things rolling until we get to the inevitable Mondo FunnyBooks Season 2. For those of you wondering, I am still waiting for a couple of videos to come in and a couple of books to come in, and then I shall do it properly. J. Allen Sanford, I have spoken to you and asked to do some of your stuff about Carnal Comics. I will get to that. I'm waiting for a couple of promo videos to properly get the right tone, if you will, for what's going on with your stuff. So, this is on the Fandom Iconic channel, or will be. You're probably watching this on Facebook Live, or apparently nobody is. So, in the future, this will be on the Fandom Iconic channel, which is full of good things. I'm currently in the process of logging all of the content of the Fandom Iconic output shop. So, you should go along to that page, yeah, the Fandom Iconic store. Or I've called it something like that. Look it up, Google it, that's what it's for. So, it's still called I Hate Comics, but I can't remember why when I originally called that, but it feels a bit silly to not call it something else. But to run you through tonight's palaver, there shall be, coming quite soon, a Neil Gaiman reading, as in I'll be reading something of Neil Gaiman's, not Neil Gaiman's in the house, because if he is in here, should have told me, should have run first. There will also be a reading from a Billy Childish book, and a rendition of a Billy Childish song, because yeah, I quite like the bloke. And also he wrote some stuff that was printed in Deadline, which was a comics magazine in the UK, so therefore yeah, the connection is there. Also he has a musician called Holly Golightly on the song, not the lass who draws her own comics with Jim Balent on Tower of the Black Rose, but a different Holly Golightly, the third that I'm aware of. Only one of them is fictional. But before all that can happen, of course, we must go to the theme song, which this week goes like this. Now pour ye your tea as I regale ye with tales of funny books and tats. You go searching for meta barons that come back with a bloody Green Lantern. It's not exactly Harriman's crazy cat. No, it's not exactly Harriman's crazy cat. Oh no, call blimey, not that. Oh no. So, before we get to the Neil Gaiman thing, I found a thing while I was looking for material for Season 2, and I was hoping I would find something to follow it up, but I can only find one instance of this story. So I'm really putting it out there because I want to know if anybody knows anything more about it. So this is the story. Hang on, let me put this down. As ever, we are sponsored by the perennial rock star. That can get me bins on. Oh, hello, we've got a notification. What's the notification? Ah, BP Johnson is watching. Hello, BP. Hope you're feeling a bit better, mate. Alright, we're all feeling a bit better. Looks like quite a few of us are down in the dumps, as it were. So, this is from the Comics Journal, issue 199, published all the way back in... I don't know, because it doesn't put it on it. Hang on. Searching. October 1997. Why is my set buzzing? Don't mind me. My set just seems to be buzzing. Oh, it's a whole bunch of Instagram stuff. Well, I've probably been cancelled on Instagram, or whatever the correct terminology is, so I imagine whatever's true will be true in an hour's time, or whenever this wraps up. So, this is taken from page 17, and it's part of the Liefeld versus Marvel story. To set the scene somewhat, Rob had taken on a job doing Captain America with Jim Lee as part of the whole Heroes Reborn project, otherwise known as unfinished business, and there was some kind of what's the phrase? I don't know exactly too much about it, but I know Rob was dismissed or left of his own accord midway through his run on Captain America and was replaced. And his next thing that he did was to promote a book called Agent America, which would be part of the Awesome lineup. Awesome was a comic publisher Liefeld has set up with Jeff Loeb and Scott Rosenberg. So, Awesome purchased the rights to Fighting American from Joe Simon on June the 5th, but Marvel went ahead with their threats of a lawsuit in August, claiming that the new version of Fighting American infringed on Captain America just as Rob's Agent America did. Both Marvel and Liefeld deemed the recent decision a victory, with Liefeld gleefully declaring that he had kicked their ass. Now, okay, so that's not the interesting bit of the story to me. This is the incident, and it might be only people were there watching have attested to it, and maybe they've never spoken about it. But to me, this is quite staggering. His dismissal from Marvel halfway through the Heroes Reborn project, which saw Liefeld return to his former employer to relaunch Captain America and the Avengers, only added to the negative publicity. Liefeld began his rebound this spring with the formation of a new company, Awesome Entertainment, with writer Jeff Loeb and former Malibu president Scott Rosenberg. But the team's announcement that the first effort from Awesome after Liefeld's removal from Captain America would be his own patriotic title, Agent America, and this sparked further controversy from those who felt the character looked far too much like Marvel's own shield-tossing hero. According to Liefeld, when he appeared at this year's WonderCon, so that would be so this would be about the summer of 1997. Marvel freelancer Mark Waid, the fan favourite writer who Liefeld had replaced on Captain America, ran up to the Awesome booth, grabbed the Agent America flyers, and then told Liefeld that he should be put in prison. Now, I know this is obviously it's like over 25 years ago, right? But I can't find anything else on this. Like, the Comics Journal has always been quite a reliable source of information. It's Rob Liefeld who posits the story himself to there. So, I mean, I don't know if the angle was to make Mark Waid look bad in the situation. To me, I'm not going to lie to you, if I saw that happening, I'd have pissed myself laughing and filmed it. But, honestly, if anyone else knows about the time that Mark Waid kicked off at Rob Liefeld over the Agent America promotional material, please get in touch. Like, if you've got fan cam or whatever, I really want to know this. I want to know what, like, the fallout was. Were there shirts outside the con? Did they get, like, cosplayers to fight on their behalf or something? Like, that's all I know, that's all I can find. The journal, like, just doesn't go any further into the story. It just goes into, like, the continuations of the actions of Awesome against Marvel. So, I wish there was more to report, genuinely, and this is a heartfelt appeal. If you know what happened, if you were there, if you were in Wade's corner, if you were working for Awesome or Maximum or Image, or you heard about it, get in touch via the YouTube, via Mondo FunnyBooks, the Facebook page, please. This feels like something that ought to be reenacted in dramatic form, do you know what I mean? So, that's a bit of hilarity aside. I was going through my Humble Bundle, because there was quite a good deal of them, and I'd forgotten I had quite a healthy library of stuff there. So, as David Lloyd is always pointing out, we should be more into digital comics, so I had forgotten that I picked up a particularly good bundle, which was the Neil Gaiman bundle, and some of you are probably aware of this, but I think it's out of print, and a lot of the stuff that Neil was talking about in 1993 doesn't seem to have been resolved, so I thought putting this was back into the ether might be hopefully a bit of a, not a wake-up call, but just a kind of like, I don't know, things we should have sorted by now, but don't seem to have done. And I'm hoping I can read this without my glasses on, because these glasses are a bit of a state. Right, hang on. 2 secs. Yeah, that's alright. Right, so this is a speech given by Neil Gaiman at the Diamond Comic Distributors 10th Annual Retail Seminar. And it's called Good Comics and Why You Should Sell Them, right? I think this is worth remembering. So, let me get me can to hand, actually. Now I won't be reaching over and disrupting myself. So this is taken from the PDF Gods and Tulips, which was a book put out, I think, by Eclipse. Hang on. I don't need to think, do I? Because I can just look it up, literally, by scrolling up. Oh, that looks like a nice Brian. Right. Let's get the full details, shall we? Right. So this came out from Westhampton House, and it's a collection of Neil Gaiman's speeches and various short stories and stuff. I got my copy as part of the Gaiman Rarity Bundle from Humble Bundle, which this isn't in stock anymore, but if you go to Humble Bundle, they have got a really nice Titan Comics bundle where you can get various bits. So the current lineup is... right, so at your 72 pence bracket, you've got a Star Trek thing, a Robotech thing, the Blacklist, which is something I've never heard of, to be honest, and the Prisoner comic, which was quite good, actually. Someone by Pete Milligan, and I've got a John McCrea sound copy because he did one of the variants, that was quite good. And then, next tier up, the 15 item bundle, you get Babylon Berlin, Blade Runner 2029, Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter, Penny Dreadful, a whole bunch of Robotech stuff, some Sherlock comics, a whole bunch of Star Trek stuff, The Mummy, The Prisoner again, Blacklist, and some more Robotech. And the last thing you'll get, if you do the whole 32 item bundle, which is only 14 quid, oh actually 13 quid, 13 quid, so you get the Blade Runner 2019 comic, some more Robotech, some more Star Trek, some more Sherlock, some more Blade Runner, some more Robotech, some more Star Trek, the Raid. Oh, okay, didn't know there was a comic based on the Raid. There's one every day, aren't you? So yeah, and everything mentioned previously. So yeah, the Humble Bundle bundles, as it were, usually turn out quite good. Like, I've got the entire Humanoids back catalogue and a really healthy bunch of Fantagraphic stuff that way. So I would recommend, as they say. BP, is that Holly Golightly off the, what's its name? The Billy Childish set, or is it Holly Golightly, the nice artist from comics? Let me know. Well, how many viewers? Oh, we're up to 4 viewers. Oh, alright. Hello, all of you. Right, that's for later. That's for later. Right, there we go. Right, so yes, this is from Gods and Tulips, which was a comic that came out, which was a whole bunch of Neil Gaiman speeches and such. Quite hard to find, but if you had Humble Bundle, you could get it that way. I think I paid like £1 for all of it. So, Good Comics and Why You Should Sell Them by Neil Gaiman. At the Diamond Comic Distributors 10th Annual Retailer Seminar, Neil Gaiman gave the following speech. The year was 1993, and the world of comics was at the height of an unprecedented boom, a year away from diving into a recession that it has yet to truly recover from. Gaiman's speech was a warning of the problems to come and a suggestion for the way out. He tells us he did not come to play Cassandra, but in some ways that is exactly what he did. Like Cassandra, his warnings were mostly ignored, and his direst predictions came true. Gaiman didn't quite have it as bad as Cassandra. He wasn't taken as war booty by a Greek king, and subsequently murdered by the Queen, at least not yet, but the day is young. His advice on weathering the storm is as true today as it was 6 years ago. This is Rise and Shine with Neil Gaiman, which is something of a contradiction in terms. I am not a morning person. I am not a morning person in the same way that Karl Barks is not unimportant to the history of comics. So pretty much for the first time ever, I wrote a speech, and I don't do that. I just get up and talk like this. But I figured, no, I did that once at a breakfast event, and it was terrible. People still talk about it. This white thing that got up there and said something, and nobody knew what it was, and I got down again. I want to talk about comics. I want to talk about good comics, and why you should do what you can to sell more of them. But first, I want to talk about tulips. I am often asked via letters to the editor and at signings to suggest interesting books to the world or assemble a reading list for the letters columns, and I never seem to quite get round to it. Well, one of my favourite old books is the remarkable volume called Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, written almost 150 years ago by a gentleman named Charles Mackay. In it, he details many of the pursuits, wise and otherwise, to which people have given their lives. He devotes chapters to such diverse subjects as alchemists, haunted houses, the slow poisoners, the great Louisiana land swindle, and the popular street cries of Victorian London, of which my favourite was "Tuppence more and up goes the donkey." Nobody ever knew what it meant, but they used to shout it at each other. It is a book with a huge cast of characters within its pages that include such luminaries as Matthew Hopkins, a self-proclaimed witch-finder general, who wandered around England in the early 1640s finding witches. He charged each village 20 shillings for the privilege of having him turn up and make them all feel really uncomfortable, and another 20 shillings a head for each witch that was discovered and disposed of. He was turning a merry profit finding witches and sending them to meet their maker, until one day he went to find witches in a little village in Suffolk. The elders of which one, who were nobody's fools, pointed out to him that no man could find as many witches as he had unless he was getting his internally accurate information from Beelzebub. Before Mr. Hopkins could come up with an adequate response to this, he was put to the test and became a former witch-finder general. The moral of this, I suppose, is that it can be unwise to start witch hunts. But I didn't come here to talk about witches, who after all have little enough to do with the vitally important business in front of us, which is that of comics and the retailing thereof. Now, as I said, I want to talk to you about something far more germane to the world we all share of four-colour funnies. Tulips. Picture the scene. 17th century Holland. Imagine the scene going all wavy at this point, and a hasty montage of wooden clogs and windmills and dykes with fingers in them, and red wax wrapped cheeses that taste more or less like yellow rubber, and one thing is missing: tulips. Now, the first tulips, this is all true, terrifying but true, arrived from the east in the late 16th century and became very popular in Holland. Very, very popular, as Mr. Mackay tells us in his book. In 1634, the rage amongst the Dutch to possess them was so great that the ordinary industry of the country was neglected, and the population, even to the lowest dregs, embarked on the tulip trade. As the mania increased, prices augmented until in the year 1635 it became necessary to sell tulip bulbs by their weight in parets, a small weight which is less than a grain. This is true. The Dutch were very, very keen on tulip bulbs. One tulip bulb sold for 12 acres of prime building land in Holland. Another sold for 4,600 florins, which is about $100,000 in modern money, plus a new carriage, 2 grey horses and a complete set of harnesses. There is a strange story about a wealthy merchant who received a foreign sailor one morning who came with news and was given, for giving the news, a smoked heron for his breakfast. The sailor, who knew nothing of tulips, also took with him what he left. The sailor, who knew nothing of tulips, also took with him when he left something he thought was an onion, and when he returned to the ship, he sliced it and ate it with his herring. And he'd eaten a 3,000 florin tulip bulb, and following a hunt was caught and sentenced to prison. By 1636 there were tulip exchanges in every major town in Holland. These functioned as stock exchanges. I'll quote from Mackay's book again. The tulip jobbers speculated in the rise and fall of the tulip stock and made large profits. Many individuals grew suddenly rich. Everyone imagined the passion for tulips would last forever, and that the wealthy from every part of the world would send to Holland and pay whatever prices were asked from them. The riches of Europe would be concentrated on the banks of the Zuiderzee River, and poverty banished from the favourite clime of Holland. Noble citizens, farmers, mechanics, seamen, footmen, maidservants, even chimney sweeps and old clotheswomen dabbled in tulips. People of all grades converted their property into cash and invested it in flowers. Houses and lands were offered for sales at ruinously low prices. You had an entire country obsessed with getting rich and convinced that it was impossible that tulips could ever be less than the ultimate perfect investment object. After all, when the rest of the world caught up with the Dutch would have all the tulips, and they'd be even richer than they were already. And instead, the rest of the world stared blankly at the Dutch for fussing foolishly after something that was, after all, only a tulip. The entire economy of Holland was destroyed. I wish I were exaggerating, but I'm not. There was a madness and a foolishness that seems pretty apparent to an outside observer. Now, I'm not Dutch, so it's very easy for me to feel very smug about this. But something very similar happened 100 years later, when the South Sea Company infected all of England with the joy of investing. At the height of the craze, the so-called South Sea Bubble, you got share certificates being traded. At one point there was an alleyway they were being traded on, and the same share certificate would go down the alley, going up in price as people bought it from each other. And eventually a lot of people were wiped out, fortunes were lost, and a lot of people were made very miserable. At least the Dutch have been able to eat the unwanted tulip bulbs. And if you think this has nothing to do with you, well, it does. Too many comic stores are trading in bubbles and tulips. I'm not here to play Cassandra, and don't have the figure nor the legs. I merely point this out. I think any comic shop that sells multiple copies of the same comic to any child under, say, 16, because that child has somehow been given the impression that she or he has been handed a license to print money, should, if nothing else, get the child to read a form explaining that comic values can go down as well as up, and require it to be signed by a parent or guardian. I think any organisation or store that pushes comics as investment items is at best short-sighted and foolish, and at worst immoral and dumb. You can sell a lot of the same comic to the same person, especially if you tell them they're investing money for high guaranteed returns. But you're selling bubbles and tulips. Eventually the bubble will burst, and the tulips will rot in the warehouse. Which is why I want to talk about good comics. Now, I have a vested interest here. I write, or I try to write, or I'm doing well, I write good comics. I don't write collectibles, nor do I write investment items. I write stories. I write the best I can, and I write stories for people to read. Now, a little digression here. Before I wrote comics, I was a journalist. Like writing comics, journalism is another profession that usually doesn't involve getting up in the morning. And as a journalist, I used to write, whenever people would let me, about comics. The high point of this, for me, was in 1986 when I was commissioned by the prestigious Sunday Times magazine in England to do a feature article on comics, and I interviewed a number of people for it. I interviewed Alan Moore, Frank Miller, Dave Sim, Brian Bolland, and many, many others. I worked really hard on it. This was going to be the first major national magazine article promoting comics as a medium in England. I sent the article to the editorial gentleman who had commissioned it, and heard nothing, not a sausage. So after a couple of weeks I rang him up, and he sounded very subdued. "How's the article?" I asked. He said he had a problem or two with it. This is always what they say. They never say I don't like it. They say, well, I have a problem with it. And I suggested he tell me what the problem was so I could rewrite it and get it better. Well, he said, it lacks balance. In what way? These comics, he paused and then he spat out, you seem to think they're a good thing. Now, apparently he had been hoping for something that Frederick Wertham would have been proud of, and that wasn't what he got. But we agreed. I had no plans to rewrite it to give it the balance that he felt it lacked. And he sent me a kill fee for that article, which was twice what I got for getting articles printed anywhere else. This huge check for this thing never got published. This huge check for this thing that never got published. I would much rather have had the article printed than the money, because I do believe that comics are a good thing, and if I didn't, I'd still be a journalist, or I'd be writing unproduced screenplays for mind-boggling sums in Hollywoods, or I'd be growing tulips. We are living in what the Chinese curse described as interesting times. And I like that. The landscape is changing and erupting and exploding. New lines and publishers and titles and universes appear and vanish. Some comics are selling in numbers undreamed of in 1986. Stores spring up like mushrooms after a heavy rain, and it's hard to tell what things are going to be like in 5 years' time. But I will tell you this. Stores that sell and push comics will still be around because people who read will still be with us, and they will still want comics. Another flashback. Philadelphia, 1990, and I'm attending a small American convention which was followed by the meeting of the CBRI, and I was asked to stay on and attend a panel discussion. The panel consisted of marketing reps from all the major publishers at the time, someone from Diamond, and right down at the end, more than a little bemused and rather puzzled about what I was even doing there, me. Literally, actually, right down the line, right at the end, there's me looking at everyone. First of all, everyone talked about barcodes and comics. I learned more than a human being would ever wish to know about putting barcodes on comics. And then they talked about racking, and then they talked about pricing, and then they talked about barcodes again. I was starting to wonder, what really am I doing here? On a really existential level. Why was I here? How had I got here? And Steve Gursky, who was presiding over the whole shebang, may well have thought the same thing, because he stood up and said, "We have a creator question. We have a creator here. Does anybody want to ask the creator anything? Ask him a creator question." There was no sea of hands, no forest of waving arms. There were some very puzzled-looking faces, and eventually someone took pity on me and put their hand up and asked a question. As a creator, he asked, what's the difference between creating high-ticket items and low-ticket items? I suppose he wanted to be reassured that I was putting an extra $3 or $4 worth of verbs and adjectives in the high-ticket items. I really don't know. I said, look, there's no difference. I just try to write good comics. There was a silence, and made bold by this, I added, and I wish you people would do more to push good comics. 300 retailing eyes looked very puzzled indeed. Now, many of these retailers have since come up to me and told me proudly of the efforts they've made since in that direction, and the success they've had with that. Someone wisely asked me what I meant by the good stuff, and somebody else asked me what I meant by pushing it, and I told them, as I will tell you, what I mean by the good stuff is the comics you enjoy. If you yourself have stopped reading comics, and sad to say many retailers have, there's too much out there, or one day they found they no longer enjoyed West Coast Avengers or Avengers Spotlight and gave up on the whole thing, disillusioned, then browse around, ask friends, ask your staff, ask customers. But most of you have comics you like, and you should be pushing them. How? Well, it doesn't involve much. You can put a rack near the door of things you're proud of selling. You can order just a few more copies of things you think are really good and try and sell them. You could offer a money-back guarantee to anyone buying something you have faith in. It's really not a hard thing to do, and it does tend to work. Pick a comic of the week and push it. Suggest to the customers who don't read what they buy that instead of just buying things they read to bag them. Try to familiarise yourself with what's out there and let your tastes influence your customers. If your customers are mainly adolescent boys who go away when they tire of childish things, well, make sure they know there is life after Spider-Man. Put a little effort in and you may have a customer for life, and this is a good thing. We are living in a remarkable time for comics. There is more exciting material available now than ever before, and I mean it. There is more excellent material currently in print and available going all the way back to Little Nemo than at any other time in history. This is also a really good thing. Do I want any of you to make less money? Of course not. I want you all to have jacuzzis in your Cadillacs, more stores than you can shake a stick at, or sticks that you can shake a store at if that's your idea of fun. And while we're at it, I would like you to be happy and healthy and never again bothered by telephone salespeople. May your luggage always be the first on the airport carousel, and may your pets never spontaneously combust. All these things I wish you, but remember what it is that you're selling. Now, when I go on tour, I like to ask people how they started reading my stuff, and mostly it's word of mouth. Friends tell friends. Friends force friends to sit and read it. And in a lot of cases, store assistants tell customers they'd like it. Sometimes it's sexually transmitted. In stores where the salespeople like Sandman and push it hard, we constantly equal or outsell whatever is hot. The people who read a copy of Sandman buy that copy and lend it around. And then we get new readers. And the new readers go back to the comic store and buy all the trade paperbacks to catch up on the story so far. And then they buy an extra copy to give to their friends, and the story continues again. But I have no desire to enforce my tastes on any of you. If I ran a comic store, I'd be pushing Bone and Cerebus and Love and Rockets and Sandman Mystery Theatre and Animal Man, Madman and Cages and Yummy Fur and Peep Show and Gregory and Gru, just to pick a few examples from the stuff I like. And I'm not telling you to push those titles, although I wouldn't mind it if you did. I would like you to push the stuff that you think is good. Push children's comics to children, and good superhero comics to children who like them, and good grown-up comics to adults. I'm really just asking you to think of comics as a reading material, think of comics as an entertainment, think of comics as stories. You aren't selling investment items, you are selling dreams, and never forget that. Comics are for reading and enjoying, in the same way that tulips are for planting and blossoming and appreciated. And the next time someone tells you about comics as a hot investment item of the 90s, do me a favour and tell them about the tulips. So, that is that. I was inspired to read that. Beyond the Humble Bundle thing was having a chat with one of the guys in the Kingston branch of Piranha Comics, and we were having a discussion that people have done this job for a while, which is like, we have all this crap on the wall and none of it is worth reading. That was my interpretation of their layout, not his. His was simply like that he was quite keen on working out how to sell good comics, and my answer was, well, push the stuff you like. And I'd also said, and he didn't make a reaction, so he's not in trouble. It's my own fault, and unfortunately I don't work for anyone, so you can't fire me. It is not your boss's fault if they overorder. It's not your boss's fault. Sorry, it's not your fault if the bosses overorder. Whatever you think is good, you push that. And people remember that. Like, I have people who remember me from, God, like the turn of the century for recommending comics. And when they ask me now, what do I think is good? That's the key to it. Everything Neil said is everything I've been doing for a very long time. And it tends to work. Other people's ordering is their own problem. And if your answer to the current comic crisis is to order some more variant covers to put on the wall, how's that working for you? I am really thirsty today. I think this is like my 5th can that I've wrecked. Anyway, the next thing. How long have I been going? 34 minutes, that's not bad. Let's see what's going on in the comments. Mr. Johnson. Hello, Brandon. There are a lot of... Even second-hand comic books have lots of crap comics. Everywhere has crap comics. BP, like, it's the danger of the field, as it were, that every medium is going to turn out a shitload of crap. And there's no way around that. It's just Um, I did look for initiative previews not too long ago, and it was depressing how little had changed. It's just that, you know, it all got worse. Or maybe I'm just old and it all looks worse to me. But yeah. But it's still really good stuff out there. I just don't think it's designed for sequential comics. No, that's not true. I think it's probably the responsibility of the comic retailer and their staff to be more educated about pushing the good stuff and to know what their good stuff is. And even if the person genuinely believes that something that I would consider is awful is good, at least they're genuine about it. Do you know what I mean? I almost feel like the world of comics retail has absolutely taken any personality or any salesmanship out of it, where you're just encouraged to essentially be generic guy in like Batman or Green Lantern shirt. You're there to scan a barcode and look like someone who would be in a comic shop, which is a great shame. You know, I remember not too long ago I was working with someone who thought that knowing the full lineup of the current Justice League was way more important than knowing the difference between Will Eisner and Will Elder. Brandon, there are a lot of very good comic books. There have always been a lot of very good comic books. The problem is that they've always been glutted out by the amount of just crap that is pushed out there for no reason except to maintain a copyright, or that a retailer has ordered maybe 157 copies too much of because they need to get that 1 in 200 cover. You know, there's loads of good stuff. That's always been true of comics. The fight has always been getting the very good books, the what's the word? The exposure they need in a natural environment. Like, I always used to do the thing of getting like the first issues of stuff I really liked and selling it at cover price right next to the counter, so I could say like, oh, this is Hip Hop Family Tree #1 and this is what it's about. And when they've read it and come back, oh look, they come back and buy the trade. Same with Sex Criminal, same with the Incal back when that was a regular comic, or Metal Horror, or God, any number of good things. Which I've put in the background actually. That's my recommended reading list. I couldn't be bothered going through all of them. So yes, there has always been good stuff. It is the business, literally the business of the comic retailer to say, look, I have this Chicago Scotty Young black and white variant of The Walking Dead Deluxe number 27 on the wall, and it costs $300. I think that has to end. I think that whole period of the comic stores using their premium space to sell comics as an investment item rather than a reading item, that needs to end ASAP, because it's not working anymore. You know, the sales of new comics have plummeted enough to make that point clear. That all that stuff does is feed into the existing market, and it doesn't expand the market. There's one mistake that every retailer, myself included, ever made, was we did not set up for the next generations. We didn't have that section for the new younger readers to read Bone or Calvin and Hobbes or The Simpsons. Well, actually one shop I did that. And every other comic shop I worked for had new comics right next to the door, and all the other stuff down the back. So all the good stuff, the library of comics, just never got seen. So that was going to be quite a lot of what the original version of tonight's show was going to be, actually. The mandate that it is probably a significant thing to stop caring about variant covers and stop ordering huge amounts of things that you're not going to sell for a short-term gain, because you're wasting money and wasting shop space. Right. Blah. Next thing. Billy Childish. I'm a huge Billy Childish fan for all of this stuff, for his writing, for his painting, for his various bands, and even his sartorial sense. So yeah, he kind of, listening to some of his music today was kind of like my Konami spinach can code, if you will. So that his music kind of, hang on, Brandon says, I agree wholeheartedly. I drive twice as far to buy my comics from a great retailer as opposed to the closest store that sells this week's Batmans for $20. Well, let's see how long that closest store is there for. Do you know what I mean? Believe it or not, I one of the best stores I ever worked for, do you know what? They used to sell this week's hot book or this week's variant cover. Like, they would give the variant cover to the standing order customer as a kind of like reward for staying loyal to them, because we would get what I'd call the whistling scroungers. You know, they'd come whistling around looking through the stack of this week's Batman or whatever, just in case we hadn't noticed the variant cover and tried to get it at that kind of price. Yeah, it was always just embarrassing to see grown men scavenge around like that. You're like, what are you doing? What are you really doing? Do you not question your own life? You know what I mean? Anyway. So this is taken from Billy Childish's book, Notebooks of a Naked Youth, which is published by Virgin Media, funnily enough. Men with mustaches unite. It's... Do you know what, I'm not going to give you any context, I'm just going to give you the reading, because like Billy's stuff kind of works how I think religious people use the Bible or the Quran, where I can just turn to any given page and something relevant to what I've been struggling with will just pop up. Yeah, I was having a row with somebody quite recently about their inability to recognise who I actually was, and that I wasn't just the avatar for everyone that they have a problem with. They could just use me as I'm too scared to have an argument with the people I want to have an argument with, but you resemble them enough that I can use you as a verbal punching bag. So, yeah. Anyway. After studying the miserable faces on my walk in the park this morning, I can honestly say I was born in the wrong age and the wrong place. I belong to an entirely different time and country. A time and country where the sincere efforts of a young writer are upheld and applauded, not mocked and ridiculed. A time and country where, rather than trying to starve him to death and expose him to all manner of hardships, a young writer is given a decent bath in a light bulb when he demands it. My landlady, for one, should be punished. She is a wicked and spiteful old bag, and I have to grit my teeth and pretend I'm sucking on a sugar cube, even to be able to say good morning to her without spitting in her face. It is no secret that in my endeavours to remain uneducated, it has been my father's sincerest wish that I should be starved out of being who I am, which shall not be allowed to happen. My father, who is a self-made man, has no time for my backwards or insolence. Get an education, he spits, and miserably I have failed. If, one day, I was to become somehow fabulously rich, I would still, nevertheless, refuse to become a professional, and would instead carry on regardless, behaving like an ill-mannered youth and continue poking fun at my po-faced betters, those who at all costs must not be mocked or laughed at, lest the weight, gravity and seriousness of their positions somehow become seriously undermined. I say this in all seriousness, much as it is contrary to my father's dearest wishes. In my opinion, it is the professional's obsession with good taste that obliterates all creativity. It is actually the sphere of life itself which forces the professional to become a neurotic expert and spitefully try to crush the intrepid amateur. And so, believing in the applause of idiots, the professional proudly obliterates all spontaneity, and then farting sits down to lunch, where, feeling pleased at Punch with himself for his violence against nature, he stuffs his ignorant face, shoving yet another cream eclair into his extravagant and ever-open gob. And apparently I am the son of my father. Let it be known that if I have any children, they will either be French or German or Swiss, but certainly not English. Even I refuse to be English, a silly race of island monkeys fit only for mowing their lawns and polishing the soles of their ridiculous and ostentatious shoes. Just so that you will be in no doubt, let me spell it out for you once and for all. I am not English, I am not a painter, and what kind of idiot would want to be a poet or musician? Poets and musicians, as is well known, are a bunch of vile, gaudy show-offs, and professionals are the sickest of the whole bunch. Firstly, I refuse to be a professional, and secondly, I refuse to be English. Oh yeah. Notebooks of a Naked Youth by your man Billy Childish. Yeah, cracking stuff. What have you got to say, BP? I think the ultimate nadir I encountered in the last few years was a particularly bad Harley Quinn anthology I read. Narrow it down, mate. And was, oh my lord, so bad. Not that they are generally bad. I read Harley Quinn Power Girl about the same time, and it was cool and funny and worked really well. And so I read this. I think it was a British reprint thing. It was just, they weren't even trying. It just stank of like, yeah, let's get this out the door. Yeah, I can understand that. I think that's a problem DC has at the moment, is they have alienated so many of the people that created DC being what it was now, where they don't have Scott Dumbia, they don't have Mark Chiaro, they don't have Karen Berger, and they don't have Shirley Bond, and they don't have Paul Levitz or Dick Giordano, and those are the people, or Joy Orlando for that matter. They don't have the people who put that stuff together, and it's quite obvious to anyone with a brain that working for DC, like you do your time on Power Girl or Harley Quinn or whatever, and then you get out and go do something for Image or Humanoids or any number of decent publishers who will let you keep your own characters. And as far as I'm concerned, DC are the company who had The Boys, not an insignificant franchise, and the next thing by Garth Ennis after Preacher, do you know what I mean? And went, actually, no, we don't want it. You don't want The Boys. So they let it go to Dynamite, and you think how many reprints of The Boys there have been, how many trade paperbacks or hardbacks or omnibuses that sold on the back of its quality, and then you double that or quadruple it by the exposure on Amazon. And DC had it and went, you're alright, you can keep that. Right, what? Like, aren't you a publisher? You know what I mean? Aren't you basically meant to capitalise on the talents of your staff and make as much money out of them as possible? Like, no, just didn't want it. Just didn't want The Boys. So it seems to me things like whatever has had some degree of success, they will, like Doomsday Clock, like The Button, like what's the new thing, Rorschach, or Tom King doing the Giffen and DeMatteis riff on the Justice League, or however many versions of Batman they can do, or the Batman who looks like Judge Death, or doing Batman Long Halloween again. Like whatever had a prestige to it, they'll bring it back. And if they can get Frank Miller back for Dark Knight Returns 4, they will, but they don't have to. Like, because it's quite clear that there are any number of talents who will happily do another version of Dark Knight. Like Sandman alone, how many spin-offs of the Neil Gaiman Sandman are there? Yeah, Bella. Like there's The Dreaming, and God, Hellblazer became a Sandman book. There are at least 4 Sandman books now, because Sandman was a big deal. So, if you're going to get 2/3 of the success of the original Sandman, well, it's better than nothing, because they're not getting any new ideas, they're just getting different takes on the same old. And I do kind of think Tom King is on a mission to, just kick over any holy grails they had. So, did people like Mr. Miracle when Jack Kirby did it? Let me do my Depression Vaughan version. Did people really like Giffen and DeMatteis' version of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold? Let me do my version of it. Was Watchmen like one of the most sacred and revered comics that had ever been published, and like one of the most happy accidents that DC ever got? I'll do my version of it. Mate, the problem with a lot of this stuff is DC have so many characters that you don't. I think if the story was really good, if Rorschach's really good, it doesn't need to be a Rorschach story. Just be a Question story. Do you know what I mean? Like, DC owns the Question, so just do a Question story. Because if the story's that good, then it doesn't need to ride on the coattails of Rorschach. It's name, right? But probably just being cynical. So yes, BP, I'm presuming that you're talking about dropping the boys. Yes, it was crazy. This goes a while back now. So I think, yeah, because I was still working in Orbital, so yeah, definitely drinking heavily when that happened. I think it was issue 6 of the boys had like a celebration scene, and the 7, the Justice League and Amalgams of the 7, right? They had their celebration scene, which was them having sex with some prostitutes who were blatantly the Teen Titans. And again, like, well, I don't know if somebody at DC didn't read even the synopsis, or had never heard of Garth Ennis before, because the man was not new to taking the mickey out. This is the bloke who wrote The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, right? This was not a bloke who sat down with his copies of Adventure Comics 247 and held like shining lights up to them as if they were some kind of shrine. The bloke had been taking the mickey out of superhero comics for years at that point, so I expect Garth Ennis writing superheroes for Wildstorm, by the way, not for DC, but for Wildstorm. Like, yeah, he's probably going to take the mick. I mean, the first issue has got Batman getting kicked in the face. Wasn't that massive a jump? Brandon says they are milking Joshua Williamson for everything they can right now. Him and Tom Taylor are holding DC together. I can well believe it. God, the only thing I saw of DC's recently that I thought, oh, that looks quite interesting, was the One Star Squadron thing, which is apparently Power Girl and Red Tornado are poor, and they're trying to run a superhero company team or something. I don't know. The preview pages looked quite funny, but that's the area of DC I've always quite liked. Not so serious stuff like the Legion of Superheroes, Power Girl, Ambush Bug, For My Sins, the Heckler. Yeah, I'm the one who bought every issue of the Heckler. Like, that stuff I quite like. Obviously, the Justice League International stuff. The serious stuff, not so much. But the problem is, I'm not the person whose sensibilities that DC should be appealing to anyway. And when I see stuff like the Dark Knight Metal stuff, that looks like the stuff that me and my mates used to come up with in the pub, which is like fine, but like I'm not gonna be the person you appeal to. Like I'm a 44-year-old guy who looks for reasons not to buy comics because I have too many. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you talk to the young people, but you've got money, you've got market research. Can't be that hard. Comics do sell to kids, just not superhero comics, I guess. Anyway, we are coming on to the hour, so I would like to kind of wrap up there, I think. But before we all call it a night, I would like to finish on a song. This is a song that's been running through my head in the last few days. I don't know if exercising an earworm is actually a practice that works. I should probably have a drink because my throat's a bit burnt out for talking for now. This is I Don't Like the Man I Am by Millie Childish, as sung by me. I'm lying through my teeth, I can't express my grief. I haven't got belief and I feel that I've gone beneath. Well, I can't help you 'cause I don't like the man. I can't help you 'cause I don't like the man. I can't help you 'cause I don't like the man I am. Oh no, not me, not again. The thought inside my head is making me see red. And I wanna get ahead, but I need to be led. Well, I can't love you 'cause I don't like the man. I can't love you 'cause I don't like the man. I can't love you 'cause I don't like the man I am. Oh yeah. If only I could understand the type of man I am, but I don't believe I can, and I never drew the plan. Well, I can't love you, 'cause I don't like the man I am. I can't love you, 'cause I don't like the man I am. Right, ladies and gents, heroes and villains, goods and bads, dears and queers, that's been Mondo Books. Mondo FunnyBooks 1 million. Thank you all for watching. I await promotional videos from blue-haired ladies, and I will probably respond to the remaining comments in the comments. But for now, this has been Mondo FunnyBooks. I remain Filthy Nevs. Give us a like and subscribe on the channel, because it might mean, you know, you get paid at some point, and that'd be good. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Good night, and if you can't be, remember, be good, and if you can't be good, don't get caught.